What's going on, guys? So today I'm going to be working on my media center, and sorry if the light's a bit flickery, just so I can see. Maybe I'll turn it off. Yeah, that's a little bit easier. Yeah, so today we're working on the media center. This isn't my media center, this is an Xbox power supply. I'm going to be adding a bit more power to the media center. It's down here. I have a problem where the power supply that's in it just barely can't provide enough current for it when it's fully loaded up. When the when you're doing something fairly graphics intensive and it's pulling a lot of current, the power supply starts making that really bad noise where it's basically where the filter capacitors and everything in it just can't keep up, and it makes that real whiny noise. The same thing actually happens to the Saturn in a way. That's more to do with ripple caused by a certain component. I might make a video about that. I've got one here I'm fixing at the moment. But yeah, let me think. Alright, now, so I'll just write down what I'm going to do. So I'm going to get this power supply here. This is a sort of later model Xbox 360 power supply. It's got a floating ground, but I think I can earth it anyway. It shouldn't be an issue. I can connect the two grounds together so I don't have like a weird differential. So the plan is, with this one, I'm going to take the end off it. This is the 150 watt model. I do have a 202 watt model, which I might use, but I kind of don't want to because it's more useful as an Xbox power supply. So this one can provide 12.1 amps. That's way out of focus. Yeah, this one can provide 12.1 amps. The actual graphics card, if I decide to stay with the 660 and not go to the 670, the graphics card can provide, graphics card draws max 150 watts for the 660 and 170 watts for the 670. 90 watts of that can come from the PCI connector, and the rest can come from this. So it shouldn't be an issue. So I've roughly got about 200 watts to play with, so this should work fine. Yeah, so I can wire it up anyway for either to work. So the way these ones work, normal Xbox power, normal PC power supplies, the way they switch on is they pull low. I think it's logic or whatever. Anyway, there's the green wire, it pulls low, so it pulls to ground, but these pull high, so this will pull to either 3 or 5 volts, and I want to be able to have this switching with the computer, and because it'll switch with 5 volts perfectly fine, I'm just going to wire it up to the 5 volt rail on the media center's power supply, and then this will turn on with the media center. It'll go through a weird reboot loop. I haven't worked out why they do that. It's just a Dell thing. It's kind of annoying. It messes up stuff like this, but it hopefully shouldn't be an issue. I could always put a giant capacitor across it or something to try and alleviate that, but I think this draws too much current for the power on. I think it draws a couple milliamps, so cap would have to be pretty damn big. Anyway, alright enough. I'm going to pull this apart and we're going to examine the cable. And yeah, see you in a bit. Okay, so I have the connector apart now, and I remember why I opened this before, so it just unclips with these newer model ones. The older one with the metal end, the 203 watt one, that's a bit more difficult to open. So let's see if we can get that in focus. So yeah, so this one was actually broken. It was cracked here, and it stopped it from kept on moving, and it would come unplugged and stuff. So the way these work is the blue wire is the power on, so you pull that high up to about 5 or 6 volts, and you can turn on the power supply. It's pretty simple. The yellow wires are 12 volts and the black wires are ground, so you know, enough current capacity in those wires to do what I want it to do. So basically I'm going to run this red wire. I'm going to cut this off, probably cut it off before the choke. Not choke, the ferrite bead, suppression bead, whatever it's for. It's for noise suppression or something, or maybe it's just a weight in this one, but it's usually what they're for. I'm going to cut it off probably a bit further down, like here somewhere, and then the red wire, the 5 volt wire, that's going to get just lopped off, don't need that. The blue wire is going to get extended, and then I'm going to use one of these pico fuses. These are 3 amp fuses, more than enough. And that's going to run from the 5 volt rail on the computer, on the home theater PC. And I think I'll just tack off I can either tack off the power supply directly, I'll go with USB. I think I'd rather go with the power supply directly. That way I can go off this fuse instead of the 500 milliamp poly fuse that's in the power on the board. And yeah, it should be fine. And then these other ones, I'm going to break them out to the yellow and the black. I'm going to break them out to probably some thicker gauge wire, maybe 18 gauge. I'll see what I got floating around. And then they're going to go to a little adapter. I could even crimp them directly into this 4-pin inline Molex connector to the 6-pin dual inline connector for the PCI. So instead of going from, that's my lovely graphics card, instead of like, I can go to 18 gauge and then go to one of these connectors, a male one of these, or is it the female, I can't remember. Or the other option is I can just go either directly to this side or to this side and just leave that interconnect there. Makes upgrading a bit easier. I don't know, I'll have a think. Or I can go directly to the back of the PCB. If I was going to go with the 670, I'll have to do that, or at least bridge them or something, because it's a dual, uses 2. I can probably trick it and just bridge the extra ground connector for the sense wire to tell it, it's actually plugged in and stuff. But I'll have to think about that one. But yeah, anyway, I think this is 18, or is it 20? This is 18 gauge, which is more than enough for this. This doesn't get warm or anything. And yeah, I can sort of fiddle with this. I might just cut this connector up. I don't really need it. It was salvaged off something else. So yeah, I'm going to get to that. As for the 5 volt, it's going to come off the power supply directly, but I can't use this connector here because the computer actually doesn't have any of these older style inline Molex connectors. It's got the newer SATA style ones. So I'll have to work that out. But that's an afterthought. I'm just getting this wired up for now. Anyway, back in a little bit. Okay, so I've got it all sort of stripped now. Instead of pulling it apart, because I forgot that the power supply, the feet on them, they're actually molded into the ABS on the bottom. So to take that apart would mean to break the feet on it, and I can't stick them back on. So I just went for the end anyway. So here is the wires. And so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all these 3 to this one piece of 18 gauge, and then this is going to plug into that PCI Express adapter, and it has 2 18 gauge wires going from, like for the yellow one, well, that's not even focusing, focus, yeah, so it's got 2 18 gauge wires, and then 2 more here, and I'm going to divide these up. I've got 3 black wires, so I might bundle them all together. And then for the trigger, for the 5 volt, I'm going to use one of these JST connectors. The one side's going to go from the blue wire, and the other one's going to go to from the power supply to here. So I've got they're just through-hole board connectors, so I'll probably wire this piece up to the computer, heat shrink it, have this one coming off this blue wire, probably just take out the other 2 pins and just use the white wire for it, or actually the red. Red would be better. Red, you're dead. Anyway, so I'm going to solder these all up, and yeah, should be golden. Okie dokie, so a bit of bodgy soldering later. It's kind of a messy joint, but just got to heat shrink this, and then we're going to run this other wire, and it's going to go to, now what do I got here? This guy, and then we should be in business. Heat shrink hides all your mistakes, like botched elections and other things. So to add a bit of more structural integrities, I'm going to use some of this nifty pink tape. Put it right there. And I'm going to tape this red wire onto there. And then I'm going to find out where the hell I can put this. Okie dokie, so I've found a point of entry, which is this polyfuse, which is for the USB. I think it's actually for the whatchamacallit, the PS/2 connectors, just here. I don't know, I have to have a closer look, can't really see. But I'm gonna solder to the front of that one, so before the fuse, and then I'm gonna run a wire, probably just, I don't know, some leftover pieces of fairly thin wire, like 20 gauge, 25 gauge or something. And I'm gonna run a fuse inline, 3 amp fuse. Oh, I don't know, I guess going by how thin this wire is for the power supply on, I doubt it pulls that much current. I doubt it would pull 10 milliamps or something, or maybe about that much. But these poly fuses are rated for 500 usually, but usually more than that. If it's gonna have a huge problem with it, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So I'm gonna run the wire off here. Doesn't matter which way. So yeah, fun times. Okie dokie. So that's the 5-volt wire in. I put it on the end. Oh, this thing's not gonna focus again. Probably see that. Yeah, I put it on the end of on the other side of the polyfuse. So this is actually fused, and then I put a zap strap. Zip tie on there, strain relief, and then I super glued the connector onto the back there, so that's not going to move. Should be nice and sturdy. And then, so what's going to happen is this thing's going to plug in there into that. Stupid camera's not focusing properly. Anyway, so it's going to go in like that, and then this end is going to go to that adapter. So should be all good to go now. I don't know what I'm going to do about the lid. Now, before I had the graphics card sitting on top of the media center, and that was okay. In the new cabinet I've got for it, it doesn't look very nice. I might put the lid back on and somehow snake the PCI extension out the back, maybe. If I have some ribbon cable floating around, I need a fair bit of it. If I can find some ribbon cable, I might actually just extend it. Extend this so it's just... focus, damn it. Yeah, so it's just soldered onto an edge, little edge connector there, and then that goes to that connector. It's made by Flycon. It's like a knockoff of Foxconn. They're just a bit more fly, a bit more hip. So, yeah, I think this is looking quite neat. And then all I have to do to plug that in is just plug it in like that. It's nice and sturdy, it's not going to come out. It's fused. Got strain relief there. Nice beefy cables, a lot more current capacity than the really thin single 18 gauge I was using before, which is just here. So, yeah, let's find out. Okay, so it looks like we've run into a bit of a snafu here, but I've found a solution. Okay, so the voltage that comes out of the power supply for the 5-volt standby is like 4.98 volts or something, and the computer supply is exactly 5, right? So, you know, it's like, oh, there shouldn't be much difference, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't work. But I found if I put a 4K resistor in between, 4K, what did I work it out was? It was like 4,700 ohms or something. 4K7 or whatever it is. I don't know. I'm feeling a bit stupid today. But anyway, the color code for the resistor is yellow, purple, black, brown, brown. So, yep. So putting one of those in series between the blue wire, the PS on, and 5 volts from the computer seems to make this thing turn on. So if you have the same issue and you try and do this yourself, that's what I found worked. So yeah, I'm just going to put that in. And another thing, I put the wrong bloody connector on here. This is meant to be the opposite, the male connector, whereas I've got the female connector. So, kind of annoying. Yeah, gonna have to fix that somehow. I don't know. I don't really want to redo those solder connections there, because they're so pretty and neat. I might just change the connector on the other one. Anyway, back in a little bit. Tell you what though, this wire, the one that comes in this chintzy little adapter, I was having problems with this. It was just randomly not displaying a picture on the computer. And this red wire, which is used as a sense wire on the PCI connector, the middle one, which just gets pulled low to ground, this wire was barely even connected to this. Look at the crimps in this thing. If you can see it. Stupid camera. So that. I just like tugged on it. I just pulled on it lightly and it came out. So that might have been my problem. The graphics card might have been going into protect mode because it couldn't detect that it was actually connected. And this wire is really thin. This is an 18 gauge wire. Look how thin it is. It's not copper wire either. It looks like it's copper coated steel. Just mainly because it's still fairly stiff like just normal copper wire, but very shiny on the ends, and it just feels wrong. Copper coated, copper clad aluminium wire, which is even worse. It's very springy and soft, whereas this is very hard and like it doesn't really want to bend. Oh, it does bend, but it keeps its shape, and it's quite shiny on the ends. You probably can't see it, but I can. Where you scrape it or cut it, it has like a metal, like a silvery look to it. So I reckon it's copper clad steel instead of straight copper wire or a copper mix or something. This wire is nice. It's proper 18 gauge wire. It's very stiff. There's lots of strands. If you compare the thickness, let me just check. I think this maybe be printed as like 20. No, it says 18 gauge on it. This one is real 18 gauge. Look how thick the wire is inside. The actual conductor's way thicker. So yeah, I'm trying to debate if I should shorten this just because this is not very good. But I'm not drawing like freaking 300 watts off this thing. It's like 200 max. Or sorry, 100 and... what did I say it was? 100. It'll be like 100 watts max because you're pulling like 90 something from the PCI connector. So, interesting. You know what? I think that's much better anyway. If I wasn't going to change this connector, I would never have looked to see if the crimp on this end was really bad. This end seems okay. Not going to pull on it too much, but looking down the end looks like it was crimped properly. Just this end was just crap. It's crap wire anyway. So yeah, it looks way nicer. Alrighty, now time to put that resistor in, and I think I just dropped it on the floor. Okay, so now how I was talking before about the sense wires and everything, so the graphics card can tell if it's actually got the PCI connector plugged in and if it's got both of them plugged in. This is the 670, so it uses two connectors. So this pin here, that pin there and that pin there, you can see how they got really thin traces coming off them. These two are ground, so they both pull low. They don't carry any current. It's in for the negative rail, the current's only held by these two and these two pins. So we can just run, any piece of wire would do, just going from this to that one, and then just to common ground, which is these four, those two and those two. As for the 12 volt rail, it's all gang together. It's all they're all connected in parallel with each other, so they're all common. There's a big common bus bar. You can see here that it's hard to see through the camera. So this big pad here, that's test pad. That's 12 volts. That's ground. So we could just run two pieces of Kana wire or like magnet wire or anything really, and just go to that pad there. It's got a lot of thermal capacity in it, so it's probably going to be easier to jump across to either of these. Probably this one to this one, and then this one to... let me have a look. Probably this one. It's got a bit more thermal relief there. So yeah, I'm going to do that, and we'll see if this card works. I don't have any idea if it will. Okay, so here's the not so pretty little jumper. So now that's all common together. The entire ground plane is common. All these ground pins are all common together. So this will even if you don't have anything plugged into it, it'll still be like, it'll still run. I wouldn't recommend that. This card pulls a fair bit. Just have to check a few things on this. This one's been just thrown around for the past couple months. It hasn't really been taken care of. 670, so it should be okay. If worst comes to worst, I can also just add in again this guy, which is just another one of these little adapters, and I could add that in, take some more power from the power supply. Not sure. I don't know how well that's going to go, just because running two switch mode power supplies in parallel might be a little bit tricky as far as like current regulation goes and stuff. So yeah, that might be an issue. So yeah, and I switched over to manual focus. This is way easier. Yeah. Okay, so it's all done now. There it is down there. You probably can't see it, but yeah, I'm just reinstalling Windows 10 on it. There you go. It's all installed. Yeah, so I can't run the power going from the PC to the graphics card as well as using the external supply, because what happens is it doesn't turn off the second power supply because anyway, it doesn't turn off the second power supply because of some reason, I don't know why. And what happens is this remains turned on, and there's enough leakage going backwards through the 12 volt rail on the graphics card back through the computer. It loops back through and ends up feeding about 1.8 volts out back through the that 5 volt cable that I installed for the trigger for this, the power on trigger for that. It feeds about 1.8 volts and it keeps it active, so it just goes in a loop and just stays like that, doesn't turn off. Not a huge issue with the power from the PCI connector and the I think it's about 140 watts from this. I end up with about I think roughly it's about 220 watts combined. This graphics card max uses 170, so should be fine. That's not including overhead for everything else, but it was working before with just this graphics card. This is just adding a bit more power to it so I can run it at full load if I want to. Anyway, that's all for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!